Okay, this is the Kingston Springs Regional Planning Commission meeting for, get to the right page here, January 13th. And I'm calling it to order. I'm going to have a roll call of voting members. Keith Allgood is absent. Tony Campbell? Here. Tony Gross?
Here.
Mike Hardis?
Here.
Lauren Hill?
Here.
Brian McCain is absent. Mike Patno, that's me, I'm here. Chuck Slater?
Here.
Todd Verhoeven?
Here.
Okay, and for the non-voting staff, Sharon Armstrong?
Here.
John Lawless?
Here.
Martha Brooke Perry?
Here.
And Brittany Stanley's absent. Okay, so we have a quorum, and now I'm going to turn the meeting over to City Manager Lawless for the election of the Kingston Springs Regional Planning Commission Chair.
Thank you. I would like to open elections or nominations for the Chair of the Kingston Springs Regional Planning Commission.
I nominate Mike Patno to be the chair of the Kingston Springs.
Oh, okay. And I won't be offended if somebody wants to nominate somebody else.
I second.
Second, thank you. Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, nominations close. One nomination, all in favor of Mike Patno as Chair of the Kingston Springs Regional Planning Commission?
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed? Congratulations, Chair Patno. I'll return the meeting to you.
Thank you, John.
Mainly, I just didn't want to have to get up and switch seats around.
That's
That's a good beginning, I guess.
Thanks. Okay, so in front of you, you have the Planning Commission meeting minutes from December 9th.
Chairman, you need to do elections for your vice chair and your secretary.
Oh, right. I misread item 5. Thank you. So, now I'm going to take nominations for the vice chair. We have a nomination for the vice chair.
I nominate Chuck Slater.
Okay. Do we have any other nominations for vice chair?
I'll second Chuck.
Okay. Any other nominations? Okay. Having no other nominations, all in favor of Chuck Slater as the vice chair, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so Chuck Slater is the vice chair, and now we also will have a secretary, is that correct? Okay. So do we have a nomination for the secretary of the Planning Commission?
I'll nominate Lauren.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Okay. So we have Lauren Hill nominated and seconded. Do we have any other nominations for the secretary? Okay. So nominations are closed. All in favor of Lauren Hill, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so Lauren Hill is now secretary. Congratulations, Lauren Hill.
Oh, Lauren, I didn't. That was okay, wasn't it?
We'll talk later.
All right. Okay.
And Chuck, congratulations again.
Congratulations.
Okay, now we will, you have the December 9th Planning Commission meeting minutes before you. If you could put them over, and do we have a motion to approve them?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the minutes of December 9th meeting are approved. And you have today's Planning Commission meeting agenda before you. Do we have a motion to
So
approve?
moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so today's agenda, Sharon, do we have an amendment?
We're fine.
Oh, we're fine, okay. Sorry about that. I didn't see your hand. All right, so now we have community input. Is there anybody here who wants to address the Planning Commission? If you do, could you raise your hand for me? Okay, I don't see any hands raised, so we don't have any community input today. Now we're moving on to item 9, old business. 9A is the Ellerly subdivision, West Kingston Springs Road. Determine items to be required in the PUD agreement. And then there are 5 Items listed below that, the timeline of the PUD for phases 1, 2, and 3, soil and erosion plan and SWIP implementation, layout of phases 2 and 3, bonding requirements for phases 1, 2, and 3, and enforcement activity related to stormwater issues on the property. Sharon, is that yours?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the Planning Commission will remember from last month's meeting and the meeting before that, we had asked the developer of the Ellerslie subdivision to provide a number of documents for the Planning Commission's review. You voted for a list of things at the previous meeting for them to supply. The first being a timeline of the PUD. As you know, the PUD expired after 2 years. That's been some 13 years ago. Second was a soil and erosion plan and SWIP implementation for phase 1, 2, and 3 based on complaints from the community for soil and erosion issues on the property. Third, a general layout plan for phases 2 and 3. A bonding requirement of $290,000 for phase 1 only, to be done in the form of a performance bond rather than a letter of credit, which the city is about to re-implement. 390, I'm sorry, I apologize. And then last, I want to discuss, once these items are addressed, enforcement activity related to the stormwater issues and runoff issues on the property. Within your packet, you will find a submission by Civil Site Design Group for the soil and erosion control plan in your packet. The documents are small. I have reviewed these. They do meet the city's requirements. The issue that I have with the soil and erosion document that's been presented to the Planning Commission is the insistence by the developer that this soil and erosion plan for phase 2 and 3 will not be implemented until phase 1 is completed. Their proposed timeline for phase 1, which right now has 2 lots underdeveloped and 6 lots undeveloped, is 5 years for phase 1 to complete that phase, and then they anticipate in excess of 10 years for the completion of phase 2 and 3. As you are aware, we've had complaints going on now for almost 9 months on this property. It is staff opinion that to delay the soil and erosion implementation for a period of 6 years is going to exacerbate that situation rather than resolve it. So I'm going to recommend that you deny the length of time for that soil and erosion plan. And of course, the engineer is here and can speak to you about his position on that. We still have not been given a copy of the bond requirement, even though it has been proposed. We don't have an executed copy of that. I'm going to ask that you order the applicant to do so. It's also my understanding that the applicant wishes to transfer ownership of some of the property to another entity other than Mr. Merville. So that's something they can discuss with you as well. And then the layout for phase 2 and 3 is also within your packet. I don't have any particular umbrage with the layout. It's the timeline that I'm concerned with. This PUD has a life history right now of almost 15 years. Phase 1 lacks completion of 8 lots out of 35 lots, or 34 lots. I think 5 years is excessive, so with the Planning Commission's approval, I would like to suggest a completion of substantial progress within no longer than 12 months for phase 1. We originally had 2 years that expired some time ago. I want to encourage forward movement on this project rather than having it sit for another 10 to 15 years. And I am extraordinarily uncomfortable with the idea of entertaining phase 2 and 3 with a soil and erosion plan that is predicted to take 10 years to begin to address some of the runoff issues that are currently occurring on the property. I don't think it addresses the violations on the property at this point, nor does it address the concerns of the residents who already live within the subdivision. So with that, I'm open to any questions, and I'm going to ask for your deference tonight. I yet once again have an ear infection. I apologize. It seems to be coming pretty frequently lately, so it's a little hard for me to understand you or hear you, so if you could speak up, I would appreciate it greatly.
Okay.
So with that, does anybody have any questions for me before the applicant presents?
So the original PUD was,
I apologize.
yeah, let me take this thing off, maybe that'll help. The original PUD agreement expired?
The original PUD agreement was drafted for a 2-year period, expired at the end of that 2 years. As most of you are aware, there was a market disruption at that time. So the city worked with the applicant and allowed him to move forward. There was no formal redrafting of the PUD agreement at that point. So at this point, the PUD agreement has been expired since 2010.
Was there a water runoff plan in that one? There was?
Yes, sir. We have received 8 separate complaints. We received some of those complaints multiple times. Some of the residents have submitted videos, pictures, a number of other things. The streets are still not finished. There's still very large potholes in the streets. The way the project has been designed, water is running off of the hill. There have been 2 separate attempts to slow down the feed of water from the undeveloped lots and the 2 lots that are under construction behind some of these properties. It has not worked. Water is still continuing to invade people's garages, to flow over the curb and gutter, and it's continuing to erode the road base and cause damage to the property itself. It's at the last inspection that I conducted 2 months ago, was plowing trenches between the occupied lots. So,
My question is, though, do we have a requirement for water erosion in the first PUD, and it never got executed? Is that the deal?
yes, sir, there was a requirement for stormwater erosion and control. There was an existing SWIP. There is also an NPDES permit for stormwater disposition. It's simply not being
It's not working? Okay.
That is correct.
That's what I need to know. Thank you.
Okay.
So at this point, I am, as staff, and having been involved in this project since 2007 off and on, uncomfortable with the idea of a 10-year timeline for the completion of this project. I would like to recommend that you separate phase 1 of the project as the only phase that's the subject of a PUD, and then I want to approach the vacant areas of phase 2 and 3 simply as an enforcement action for stormwater disposition, rather than entering into a 10-year agreement for the implementation of the improvements and stormwater disposition.
Okay. Are there other questions for Sharon at this point in time before we move to the next person? Okay. So, sir, are you representing the
Yes, sir.
Ellerslie subdivision? And could you tell us your name and your role?
Absolutely. Brian Lovelace, Civil Site Design Group in Nashville. We're civil engineers and planners.
Okay.
I've been involved with this project off and on for about, I'm guessing, a year and a half. Really started getting involved here in this latest complaint. The client developers asked me to get involved, talk to staff, figure out what's happening, get out there in the field, figure out what's happening, and try to implement some fixes, is the best way to say it. There's obviously a massive uphill of phase 1. Phase 1 is what's built out there today. Phase 2 and 3 is the undeveloped grass areas up on top of the hill. Phase 2 and 3 is about 5 acres that drains down to all those homes. There is, at this moment, nothing stopping that water from coming down into phase 1. So the plan that you have in front of you and the plan we've given staff, if you look at my grading plan, in essence, what we're doing is we're building a ditch at the most uphill side where those homes are today. So all that water is coming down the hill, hits the ditch, goes over to a detention pond that we're proposing, and in essence goes around all these homes. That's the plan. My professional opinion, that is the biggest thing that needs to happen today. That's 5 acres of drainage that's pouring down on these people. And I'll get to the schedule a little bit too. I think there's a complete misunderstanding on my part that I probably presented to you on the timeline. So I'm in agreement with, I think, everything you're saying on the timeline. But I'll get to that in 1 second. That's my fault, first of all.
Is this the one you're talking about with the drawing here?
And there are larger samples, larger drawings
there's
in front of
if
you.
you go back.
Is it grading and erosion, is that the one you're
Yes, sir.
talking about?
you need to look at?
Front back one more. I just started writing the sheet number.
Number one.
Is that the sheet?
If I may, while you're finding that, from staff perspective, we are less concerned with the timeline of the undeveloped areas than we are the stormwater runoff that's creating the damage.
Current, right, the current stormwater.
So sheet C103 is what I am proposing to do.
103?
103
Here it is.
should show the ditch and the pond. Yeah,
Of course.
sorry for all the sheets. So,
And the erosion,
yeah, I'm sorry, the erosion.
there's two different, not the puddling, the erosion.
Correct. So you can see, we're running a ditch, running a ditch left to right, yep, left to right, into a proposed pond. That's the detention pond. Currently, everything drains to Kingston Springs Road.
See, you're looking, there's another set
This is the other set right here.
for the erosion.
See the ditch?
Correct. Left to right is where it would drain.
not correct, so is that what someone?
So it's still,
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so everything,
Actually, here's the ditch.
yeah, so everything above that, if you look at the sheet, everything above that,
Okay.
it is existing. Everything below that on the sheet, looking at the sheet, and the bottom of the sheet is future. So it's picking up the water,
This is existing and this is future.
picking up the water and getting it around these existing homes. That's what we're trying to implement, really immediately. What I've understood from the clients here, recent conversations, is that we will start that immediately, is what he told me.
There's the pond.
And obviously it needs to happen immediately. So I think there's been some confusion on timeline, that's my fault, Mr. Armstrong. That part, which is very necessary right now, will be started immediately, is what my client tells me. That'll fix a ton of issues out there that these folks are seeing. There's all this water, 5 acres uphill, this is going right past this ditch, that's not there today, obviously, going right past this ditch, going right into the homes. So that's step one, and that's what we'd like tonight for approval from the planning commission, so that we can work with staff to get a final sign-off, so we can begin that work, just that work. That's the most important work that needs to be done today. Am I saying the steps right?
Pardon?
Am I saying the steps right? We gotta get planning commission approval and then
I'm
staff.
sorry, you'll have to ask him. You have
Just
to
from a
address it.
processing standpoint, I think planning commission has to prove it, and then we work with your city engineer to get the final sign-off, so we actually physically can begin the work. So that's the first step. The timeline for the rest of the PUD. There's a handful of lots out in phase one that are still need to be built homes. Those are platted lots. What I understand is they're ready to build the rest of those homes. Phase 2 and 3, I think I mentioned 5 to 10 years or some long-term. That has changed in the last 30 days. There's some things on the horizon that we think that are going to speed this up immensely. Phase 2 and 3, which I know y'all want to happen also. So I know I told staff before 5 to 10 years. I don't see that happening now. We're probably okay with the timeline y'all proposing for the schedule on phase 2 and 3. But what I understand tonight is we don't have a phase 2 and 3 PUD approval. So what I understand, I'll lean on Ms. Armstrong a little bit here, is that you also have a PUD submittal package in there. What I understand is phase 2 and 3 has to be recommended for approval or disapproval, hopeful for approval tonight, to the city commission to get PUD, phase 2 and 3 PUD approved/reapproved. Because right now, we have phase 1 and that's it. Our construction plans are just for phase 1 and that's it. We've never done a phase 2 and 3 construction plan, is what I understand.
so the lot numbers here that are phase one are all the way up to 30, is that correct? You say there's 30 lots?
Correct.
And that's phase 1?
These are all built out here.
These are all built.
You got some back up here,
Yes.
okay. Where's the crest of the hill here?
Let's see.
Is that right? There's West Kingston Springs Road.
Correct.
That's the entrance.
That's the entrance. It's built to here today.
Right.
There are 2 homes being built today, right here, right here.
Mm-hmm.
This is phase 3.
Okay,
That is the boundary line
of phase one.
of phase 1, yes, correct.
Okay, does phase one go all the way up here?
It starts at 31 or something.
Yeah, okay, well, that's right here, so a little cul-de-sac right on top, okay. I'm just trying to figure out the lay of the
Yeah.
land.
If you flip over, and it's a little easier if you flip over to the other set, is a HUD set, it has color. It shows what phase one is, and then it shows
Yeah,
phase two
I
and
saw
three
that.
in color. It makes it very clear, because it is confusing.
Is it the same sheet number? On the colored set, is it the same sheet number?
There'll be your second sheet, right behind the cover sheet of the other set of plans, correct?
I think it's,
Probably good, there you go. It's the only color sheet we have. So that one really clears up what phase one is the shaded back part. Phase two and three is the colored part.
But this picture doesn't show the ditch.
Correct. That ditch is proposed. We need to build that ditch. That's correct.
so, this retention pond is gonna be where on this map? Over here, by the apartment, I mean, by the
No, it's in
condo?
the open space. Right, yep.
Right there?
Mhm.
Okay. All right.
So this is upside down from the other one.
It'd be in that open space to the right of the roundabout. That's-
So they'd be putting the
That roundabout is not built today, so if you've been out there, it's not built, so it's kind of confusing, but
ditch would be
it needs to be built.
here. Does that ditch, I guess, that roundabout, does that ditch go under a bridge or something? How does that?
Yeah, we'll put a culvert across there.
Oh, okay.
And how long will it take you to complete this water retention thing, to stop the problem that's there now?
Yeah, I don't know, but he has told me he'll start it immediately. There's nothing stopping us. We got the material, we can do the work.
You don't
It
have
depends
some
how fast we
idea
get
how
done.
long?
Excuse me?
You don't have some idea how long, be less than a year?
Oh, no. That work is probably a 3-month task. It's getting a contractor after to actually physically get to it to do the job. They're short supply today.
Yeah. Okay.
But then the color plan that y'all are looking at is the phase 2 and 3 PUD that we need a recommendation of approval to get the city commission to get phase 2 and 3, I guess, approved. Am I incorrect on that? If I am, I apologize.
Are you able to hear and follow what he's saying, Sharon?
Yes, I can hear him. Our concern, again, I'm going to reiterate the project history. John and I met with Mr. Merville, and I believe Mr. Lovelace or someone from his firm, what, John, almost 3 years ago now?
Yes, ma'am.
3 years ago, to sit down and begin a plan to address the issues on this property. These, other than drawings submitted by Mr. Merville, which came to you a couple of months ago that were hand-drawn, are the first set of plans that we've seen in 3 years of attempting to address this issue. Again, while I agree it's precipitous for anybody to entertain the idea of a phased layout for phase 2 and 3 when we're not complete with phase 1 and it has ongoing issues, my concern is that we do not have a stormwater plan, soil and erosion plan that is sufficient to contain this water from the vacant property above phase 1. So if there's a ditch cut, let's say that we go up to part of phase 2 and we cut a ditch, where will that water be directed? And where will it go? Because we don't have stormwater disposition. The city does not have a stormwater drain
Right.
off of that side to take that water anywhere. So that means it's going to have to be detained somewhere
Right.
in the event of a runoff. So where will it be detained? Because in addition to the issues that we have within the development, we are now seeing sheet flow across the road in
Right.
periods of heavy rain, which is creating a traffic issue on West Kingston Springs Road. So my concern is whether or not this has been updated in the SWIP, submitted to TDAC for their soil and erosion plan, along with the SWIP, for review, and comments back, so that we as staff have at least some comfort level that what they're presenting is going to address the issue. In the interim, you have residents who are taking on water every single time it rains on the interior of their structures.
So Sharon, just to understand, when you're showing this ditch and this retention pond, I think what you're saying is we need feedback from TDEC
Yes, sir.
on whether that retention
It's
pond and
sufficient
ditch
to
will be
hold.
sufficient.
That water in periods of heavy rain. As you're aware, this spring we had several periods of heavy rain, and I think one of the residents filmed for us the rolling water that was going into the garage, and it saturated the garage to a height of almost 23 inches within the garage and left behind about a half a foot of mud inside the garage. So we've attempted to address that with the developer on numerous occasions, and we're simply not making any progress. We have a set of plans now that they're asking for a permit to implement. I need the SWIP to be submitted to TDAC for review. I need the permit to be updated with TDAC because that permit, like every other permit, expires over a period of time. It's been a really long time. And then I would like to cleave phase 1 from the rest of the vacant property until this is accomplished, because I have zero confidence in the developer's ability at this point to move forward. We've had this same discussion for 3 years now with zero progress.
So solve the
Right.
water first,
Yes, sir.
not move, in terms of how you're recommending right now.
Yes, sir. I have zero issue once TDAC does a review, a SWIP is updated, and a permit is issued by the state, which we then can review, with issuing a grading plan for a ditch and a detention area on phase 2 to help slow down the drive of water to phase 1. But I don't want that to be in any way construed as approval for phase 2 or 3 for lots or layouts until we get to that point. We need to resolve the existing problem.
We agree too, 100%.
Okay.
We need
so-
to get phase 1 and this plan done and built, stabilized, before anybody does phase 2 and 3. We 100%
Okay.
agreement. Now, there's two different things here. There's erosion control, which is the dirt leaving the site, and that's what Ms. Armstrong talking about. There's also grading and drainage, which is my ditch and my detention pond that holds back the water to, in essence, slow down the water that's coming off the property onto these people. So two different things. The grading and drainage plan, which is the ditch and the pond, I provided calculations for detention ponds, calculations for the ditches to show that the ditch size is correct, all that stuff. Your city engineer, well, I understand, city engineer still needs to review it, get comments back and forth, and go on process. Once that's done, that part is done. Now, the erosion control plan, I'm assuming the city engineer would review it a time or two, just to give some comments. Once that is done, we send it off to TDEC to get our notice of coverage. They don't review the SWIP, the notice of coverage. And then we have an approved plan that the city's approved, TDEC's approved, and then whenever the permit can be issued, we're ready to start the work. So two different things here. I think we're all saying the same thing, but just to be clear.
One thing sounded a little different to me. Sharon, you just said that TDEC does not approve the SWIP.
They look at it, but they tell you they don't approve the SWIP.
Okay,
But-
but they do review it?
But they do review it, they say they don't, but they do issue a notice of coverage, which is the essence of a TDEC permit, grading permit.
The third element that the city utilizes in addition to staff review and TDAC review for the SWIP to make sure it contains all the elements that the state requires for disturbance of more than an acre is we will send it out to be reviewed by an independent engineer. That is done at pass-through charges to the applicant for that review. We've had great success using a somewhat local engineer for these small projects. He's very responsive. So at the point that this body makes a determination what the next step is, then that allows staff to send that forward for review so that those calculations can be checked in detail and so that we can have some comfort level that the ditch that's being proposed and the detention area that's being proposed will not once again create an issue on the property below. Right now, the property has 2 houses underdeveloped that have been subject of a stop work order for several months until this is resolved. And there have been construction debris issues on the site that have had to be repetitively addressed with rock, debris, soil, all sorts of things thrown on the lot, which directs the water to the back of people's houses. So, from our perspective, as a planning commission, we don't have a dog in the fight other than It doesn't meet our requirements for control of that water. And it doesn't meet the requirements because the work has not been done to slow down the flow of that water. So I would, again, like for you to cleave phase 1 from phase 2 and 3. Phase 2 and 3 has no development on it, nothing's ever done. No layout has been provided beyond this one, and it's a general preliminary layout. And then if you're going to approve the plan that's in front of you, then we will send it out for engineering review to ensure that it's sufficient to contain this water. At the point that the water and the runoff is addressed, then we can entertain whether or not to lift the stop work for the 2 structures that are under development.
That are still in phase 1. Those 2 are still in phase 1, correct? I'm sorry. Those 2 are still in phase 1? Correct.
Yes, sir, they are in phase 1. There are 8 lots in phase 1 that are not completely developed. The terms of the original PUD that was drafted by Mr. Craig for the city were that 90% of the lots had to be completed before any transfer to an HOA or the city had to inspect, sign off. All of those terms I want to include again, except I would like to have a 99% completion rate. Everything but the landscaping needs to be done before this is turned over to an HOA. Because once you transfer this to the HOA and all of this work is done, they're responsible for the cost. And right now, those costs are not being incurred by those residents. They're being incurred by the developer.
All right, so you need a motion.
I do. I need a motion for you to accept the grading plan, the soil and erosion plan as submitted on condition that it's engineer reviewed by the city and that revisions are made if necessary.
You need a motion to separate phase 1 from the 2 and 3.
Phase 2 and 3. Yes, sir. There's only a phase 1. There is no, at this point, there is no phase 2 or 3. No master plan has ever been submitted for phase 2 or 3.
So
It's always been marked as...
it's part of the original PUD. Phase 1 is, the other 2
Yes, sir.
are not. Okay.
We need to redraft the PUD because the one that existed no longer exists.
Right.
So the motion would be to approve this stormwater plan
Yes, sir. And the grading plan.
and the grading plan.
Condition on engineering review.
Is there also on condition of TDEC review, or is that, did you,
I will make sure this gets sent to TDAC,
Okay.
and that's just part of what the staff does anyway, but I want an independent engineering review.
okay. So, and to not address phase 2 and 3 until this is complete,
For phase 1
or phase 1
only.
For phase 1.
And then I would like you to direct staff to draft the PUD agreement. I would like the timeline of the PUD agreement to be no more than 1 year for phase 1.
With 99%.
99% completion within a year.
Okay. And does that,
Yes, which, we're saying the same thing again, you have 2 separate sets of plans. What we're asking for is approval of that ditch plan that you're looking at.
okay,
The PUD plan, I'm asking this, Ms. Armstrong, I know we just said that we're not talking about anything in phase 2 and 3, but one of your conditions, I think, was bonding of phase 1, 2, and 3. The bonding of phase 1, 2,
The bonding of
and
phase
3.
1 also is a separate item for them to consider. That will need to be provided as a performance bond in the amount of $390,000 that needs to be provided to this planning commission in their name.
And that number is just for phase 1. Your text tonight, so just phase 1, okay.
It's just phase 1 at the
It's phase
390,000.
Because the text tonight said phase 1, 2, and 3, and that's why I was confused.
so that's
It's just-
incorrect on the agenda where it says bonding requirements for phase 1, 2, and 3, that's incorrect?
Calculations came in
That's the
at the
That's the
No,
confusing
the bonding requirements, if they had proceeded to ask for phase 1, 2, and 3 requirements, I would have upped the bond request,
So that's a that's
So we need,
a
we're
typo.
only looking at bonding requests.
they're all on there because they submitted a layout for all 3 phases, and I want to cleave them.
So item 9A4, the bonding requirements should only read for phase 1.
That's correct.
So that's incorrectly listed on the agenda.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. So do we have any other questions before? Who thinks they have the motion now?
I'm trying to write that down.
John, can you capture the motion?
No, I cannot.
Okay.
Okay, I make a motion that we approve the grading plan conditioned on a couple of things. First of all, you know, there's only phase one in the PUD currently, so we're only addressing phase one, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The first action needs to be to cleave phase one.
So I want to cleave phase one from everything else.
That's a separate motion?
So that should be a separate motion?
That's the first
Okay,
motion.
I move that we cleave phase one.
Second.
Phase one only, that's all we're going to do.
Phase one only.
We're going to
Second.
We have
cleave
a
phase one from the
second.
rest of the project.
All right, so the motion is to cleave phase one from the rest of the project. Do we have any questions or comments on that up here?
And let's, if we can clarify that the motion is to cleave phase one, and at this point to not address or approve anything for phase 2 and 3, based upon the information reviewed here tonight.
We'll get the language right.
You got that, John?
So moved.
Yes, sir.
We have a second. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes.
The second item I would like to address is a performance bond in favor of the city in the amount of $390,000 for phase one only, because that forms a component of the PUD agreement.
So moved.
Second. Any questions on the motion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the performance...
Third, I would like for the Planning Commission to entertain approval of the grading plan as submitted and the soil and erosion plan as submitted with a 1-year cap for completion of the entire project of phase one, including all the street, road, curbs, gutters, build-outs, and all of the soil and erosion and water controls in place.
And do you still feel you're saying the same thing?
With a ditch and the detention pond.
Well, when she's talking about completion of phase one, are you involved in the idea of completing phase one?
Yeah, but
Within
there's
12
6 or
months.
7 homes out there. I don't think it's possible to build 6 or 7 homes in phase in 1 year.
Are you just talking about the road?
Let's just talk about, we're talking about the infrastructure?
From front to back, completion of not only the ditching and soil and erosion controls and the water controls and detention areas, but the rest of the paving, the curbing, the guttering,
The
and all of the other public or non-public improvements on this property within 12 months.
With the exception
The
of
applicant
residential
has,
buildings.
under your subdivision regulations within the PUD section, the ability with substantial movement forward to come back and ask for an extension, but I want the initial
Okay.
PUD to be set at a year so we can get some forward movement on this project. Yes, ma'am?
With the exception of privately built residences, you want all the infrastructure,
They don't have to build the house.
But not the houses.
but not the houses.
No,
That's correct.
the houses, I am ambivalent as to when the lots
Let
build
me
out.
be clear on that too, is that 99% now is the requirement for us to top the roads?
That is
what-
correct.
So we can't
So-
top the roads, we might want to exclude that, because we can't build all those homes in 1 year.
Right. that's
So
correct,
just,
yeah.
which that doesn't cause erosion. We have asphalt binder down, we're talking about topping.
The concern of the applicant is that if he paves now, he will have to repave later. So while I understand that's inconvenient for the applicant to make those improvements, but I also understand it's inconvenient for the people who are occupying those 29 houses to drive through that wasteland every single day to get in and out of their house. In some cases, to get across the base layer with a pothole larger than this table to drive over a hump into their garage occurs every single day. So again, I am ambivalent as to, at this point, it's not that I'm not cognizant of the cost to the developer, I am. I'm cognizant as to what it's going to cost. So once the soil and erosion, the ditch is done, all of that work has been inspected, then the stop work will be lifted, and they will have the ability to complete those 2 houses that they have under their control. If the owner of the other 6 lots wishes to build, we will require him to bond against the streets or any damage that he may cause to the streets when he builds out his 6 lots. So we can, again, this is not the only bond this project will likely ever see, but the residents of this subdivision deserve finished pavement to drive on. They deserve completed infrastructure, they deserve the playgrounds and the other amenities that are purported to be provided to be done. They've been living there for a long time.
Okay,
So-
I just want to make sure, are there any questions for Sharon before we?
Yeah, so right now, the pavement is not permanent up to the homes that are built.
No, sir, there is a base layer there, a large portion of that base layer in the general area. If you drive into Ellerslie on the right-hand side towards the back of Phase 1 is where the 2 houses are currently under construction by Mr. Merville or an entity of Mr. Merville's. So those 2 are there. There are areas of that base layer that have huge holes in them where they're literally just driving in the dirt.
Well, that's not my
with a drop
question.
of
My
pavement.
question is, do we have permanent pavement from the street, from West Kingston Springs Road, up past the houses that are complete?
That is correct.
We do have permanent pavement there.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Binder.
So,
Where they have to come in and out of their driveways every single day, they should be driving on a finished road.
it's not finished now?
That is correct.
There's binders, there's no
It's
topping.
not finished now.
Okay.
So most cities will not let us top a road until a 90% completion of homes, 95% completion, I heard now 99%. That's the reason I said it had nothing to do with money.
Right.
So if there's a
I am
requirement in the
perfectly
city,
comfortable with the paving and the top coat being applied to these roads. If there's any damage in the future, we will simply exercise the bond to fix it. It's real simple. People have a right to the peaceful use of their property and the enjoyment of their property. That is not occurring now.
You know, I think we're talking around this thing, I think we can work this out. I think what you need to do is permanently pave that section where there's already people living, right?
correct.
Forget about the base coat.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we can make a motion to say, hey, we forgive you on the 99,
Okay.
but you pave it all the way past everything you got built, okay? And then
That
if
is
you want to
correct.
build on the other 8 lots, and it's under the other, because they're all going to go in at about the same time, then fine, we'll address that later, okay? But I think Sharon's right. I mean, we've been, it's been in there a long time, and it still doesn't have the first top coat on it. That's crazy. We got to get that done as part
In
of this.
speaking with the owner of the other 6 lots, he has no particular timeline for building them out. They are not under the control of the developer. So he has no particular timeline, so we're trapped in this land of, we can't force him to build out lots that he owns, but we need to move forward for the occupied lots.
But we can pave everything that he doesn't own,
We
right?
absolutely can. We can pave it to the
All the way to the
point.
second cul-de-sac, right?
That is correct.
That's
There's
where
a
you
part,
want-
that part of the road still needs to be built, but yes, we're on the same page.
Yeah, but I mean, you're gonna build the road on up there, put a cul-de-sac under it to put your ditch in, right? So,
Yes.
okay, so,
So I want to make sure, when I said that we can't top it, it was because nothing to do with money or because we're just not ready to do it type of thing. It's something to do with, I thought that the 99% requirement on homes wouldn't allow us to top it. Now that we've worked that out,
99% of the
So we're
lots
okay.
under the control of this developer, which does not include the 6 vacant lots that are owned by somebody else.
okay, so you're taking those 6 out, all right.
Those 6 lots on the other end, if you're driving in on the left, are not under the control of this developer. So
So
99%
you think you
of
can
the
top that
lots
thing all
under
the
the
way up there
control
where
of this
everything he
developer.
owns and everything that's in there now has got a street?
if that's a requirement for the 1-year mark, which is what I understand, yes. The unfortunate part is just, this is probably the smallest part of your worries here tonight. Like she said, is that if something has to be cut in that road, you're tearing up a final asphalt layer, so it looks kind of bad, and you might have a little bump as you drive down, just like any road out here. I'm sure that's the least of your worries, but just wanted to let you know, that's why a lot of times we wait till the end to top roads. But this is different, so we're okay with that.
Okay.
Okay, so, What is this motion?
Yeah. Anybody like to phrase that motion?
Which one?
John, did you capture that last motion?
I have approval of soil erosion and grading plans to include all paving, guttering, and other public areas within 12 months.
All improvements with the exception, 99%, with the exception of the 6 lots that are not under the control of the developer.
Okay.
To be completed within 12 months.
And we will seek a separate bond for that developer when he
He wants to
starts,
develop. Okay, that makes sense.
if he ever starts.
Is it,
So moved.
And does that make sense?
do we also need to have the inclusion of, after review of an independent engineer, correct? So we need to have that as
We need to
well.
put that in.
That was subject to, right?
This is all subject to approval or review from an independent engineer.
Right.
Right.
And that's
That's
staff
correct,
manages
subject
that.
to the approval.
Okay.
by the
The
city's
staff
engineer.
manages that part.
And we will draft
Right,
that
we just
in
need
the
to have
form
that
of
in.
a PUD agreement, which we will then bring back to you for
For the
review.
slow group up here, now, we got, how many lots in this first phase? What's the total number of
Phase one?
lots? Huh?
That's
31?
31, yeah.
31.
31.
Minus 6 that he doesn't own, right? So that's 24.
There are 34 lots
Minus
in
6.
phase
All
1.
right, 34 lots, okay, let's get
34
there.
lots in phase
28.
one.
So we
6
got-
of those
We
are
got
under
28
control.
lots.
Sorry.
Two of those lots have got home construction that's under a stop order right now.
That is correct.
So how many more does he have out that hadn't already got a house on it?
There are 6, so that would be
6 he doesn't control.
28. He has 2 under construction, would be 26. I believe there are 2 additional
Yeah.
lots that he
All
can.
right, so we about got this done here, it sounds like.
Yes, sir, for the ones under his
we do.
control.
You're gonna have paved streets in front of 2 lots that you hadn't built on yet. Other than that, it's the other guy's problem, and we'll talk to him when he wants to develop. So it sounds to me like that makes a lot of sense for everybody.
And I'll say this too, the $390,000 mark, just everybody to know, that bond is for all of it, including the Delmar section, or whoever the home builder is. But you talk about bonding, just want everybody to know, the cities should be comfortable with that dollar amount bond that's sitting out there, that you're covered for everything that's in phase 1.
All right.
The bonding amount that the planning commission approved was $390,000 for phase 1 only.
Right,
Right,
which is
correct.
what he.
Which I think that's what
Just
he's
what it's-
saying.
That's what he's saying.
Phase one.
All of those will be reduced into a PUD agreement,
Yeah, he just said.
which will be brought back to you at the next meeting for your approval, and then it will forward to the city commission following week for their approval. And then at some point in the future, we may or may not entertain phase 2 or 3, but I'm not concerned with those 2 phases at this point.
We want to get one done. That's- I think so.
We gotta vote on the
You have to
motion.
have
We
a
gotta vote on the motion.
Okay, so can you say the motion again, John?
Approval of soil and erosion and grading, including paving, guttering, and all other public areas with 99% of area under current developer completed, under current developer's control, completed within 12 months, subject to approval of independent engineering study.
Got it, okay.
Subject to review by the engineer.
Yes.
Okay,
You said that.
somebody make that motion? Okay, do we have a second?
Complicated.
Okay,
All right, we have a second and a.
do we have any other questions or comments on it? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Lovelace.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate
You've
it.
done a good job so far.
Thank you, we appreciate
Good work.
it.
All right. So, is that all on the other lead?
That is all for that.
Excuse me.
Moving on.
The next item under old business, recommendation up to the city commission on the proposed amendment to the PUD agreement between the town of Kingston Springs, Tennessee and the Golf Club of DBI LLC, of Exhibit E, the consent action of the members of the Golf Club of DBI LLC.
This is a minor amendment, and if I may approach Mr. Chairman, it's going to take a minute, I hope. In your packet, there's a page marked 90. It's right behind all of the Ellerslie information. This is a proposed amendment to the PUD agreement for the Golf Club of DBI. Following this page, 9B, you will see Exhibit A, which is the next page behind it. There are two changes to this. You will recognize this from the PUD process for DBI from several months ago. The only change in this document, and the one that was approved by the Planning Commission, is the addition of 2 additional names. Under the consent document is people who have the authority to present and secure permits and presentations on behalf of the Golf Club of DBI. The 2 names that were added are Andy Howell and Jeff Hooper. Jeff Hooper is the project engineer. Mr. Howell is part of the construction team, I believe. So those 2 names have been added to the consent document for the Golf Club of DBI LLC. And they are asking that this Planning Commission recommend approval of the inclusion of those 2 names on this consent document to the City Commission. It will come to you next week.
Okay. I do have a conflict here. I'm a member of the Golf Club of Tennessee. I am not a member of the DBI Golf Club. It's not built yet, so.
Thank you.
So, Mike, you're excusing yourself.
Well, no, I think I can
still,
vote.
yeah,
I
he
think
can
I
still vote, he just has to
He's
show the
got to
card.
vote.
I just gotta admit that I'm a member.
Okay.
It does not have a financial element or any component. He
Okay.
just needs to.
Yeah, I just get to pay them every month. That's what that means.
Okay. Anybody else associated with Golf Club of Tennessee?
And this is a recommendation, either yes or no.
To the city commission.
And Sharon, are you recommending that it's okay to accept this? Sharon? Sharon, are you suggesting that it's okay to accept this?
I apologize, Mr. Chairman.
Are you okay with recommending this?
Yes, sir, I am. It's the addition of 2 names. It's
Yeah.
very impractical for people who aren't available every day to be able to submit things. So it's simply allowing the engineer and Mr. Howell to engage with the city.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second?
Second.
Okay. And can somebody say what the motion is?
The motion to add Andy Howell as project manager and Jeff Hooper as project
To
engineer.
accept those as listed on here.
And recommend to the
Recommend
commission.
The recommendation.
To the city commission. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. That passes.
Now, next is just, we don't have any new business, but we do have a couple of things we wanted to update you on. The Golf Club of DBI has presented a number of revised documents for the PUD that were given to me tonight for review. So there are going to be some changes in what they are proposing to do on the DBI property. So I will be reviewing those. You will be seeing them next month. I have no idea what the changes are at this point because I just got them tonight. So I just wanted to give you a heads up that this is going to change the PUD yet again. So with this recommendation that will go forward next week to the City Commission that you just made, there will be a slate of them that you will make a recommendation on next month that will go forward as well. And then with that, I would like to ask John if he would update you on the public hearing that was held on Tuesday with regard to the Golf Club of Tennessee and the Golf Club of DBI for 2 permits. One is a ARAP, which is a water resources permit for withdrawal. The other is a SWIP, MPDES for stormwater and soil erosion control. So John, would you briefly update them on the public hearing?
Oh, well, I'll give you a very high scope of the meeting, and Chair, please fill in any details you think are pertinent here. But TDEC had a public hearing for both the Golf Club of Tennessee and the Golf Club of DBI LLC this past Thursday. The town of Kingston Springs hosted at the Activity Center at Burns Park. The meeting dealt with primarily with both of those entities withdrawing water from the Harpeth River to be used as irrigation for both of the golf courses. TDEC had the public hearing to get feedback from the community prior to them making approval or denial of the applications that have been presented by those entities. The water would be coming from the Harpeth River for both of the golf courses. There were concerns from the community on the amount of water being withdrawn to facilitate the needs of the golf courses, and also there was concern from the community about any chemicals that were used as that water was irrigated or used on the golf courses and then flowing back into the Harpeth River or Brush Creek. So TDEC took the notes and the public comments. Will then take those under advisement as part of their either recommendation or denial of those permits. That's a very broad, high scope understanding of the meeting. Were there any other details you wanted to put in there, Sharon?
Just a couple small details. Currently, the withdrawal for the Golf Club of Tennessee is in Brush Creek, which you know is a much smaller stream. So the goal of these particular permits is for both entities to withdraw from the same stream of water, same infrastructure, with a shared easement for that withdrawal, and then the water be distributed and split to the two entities. It was not a contentious meeting, but there were some questions about the amount of water withdrawal. At its height, it enumerates somewhere around 400 million gallons a year. There is a step-down plan in areas of drought, which is important. So John took the extra step because we discussed it and decided it would be a really good idea to check with Second South Cheatham to see, because that's where your potable water comes from, to see if they had any concerns that needed to be addressed. They do not. They consider this to be a minimal withdrawal from their perspective from the amount of water. There is a proposal to drill under the river.
Under Brush Creek.
Under Brush Creek.
Under Brush Creek in order to facilitate this withdrawal from the river. So we wanted to let you know that. The interest of the city is because all of this occurs within our flood area. So as you know, there's a CLOMAR in progress with the Golf Club of DBI, and we're still waiting for FEMA for the results of that. They provided some more information at FEMA's request last week. So we just wanted to give you a heads up. The public hearing was held. I believe John has a copy of the presentation that was given if anybody's interested. And if you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer them.
John
Yes.
already forwarded his.
Well, I'm just curious, when was a notice put out about this meeting? I got it at the beginning of this week's first time I was aware of it. And that may be my fault. But that's something that I used to go all over the state to those meetings.
It was, since it was a TDEC meeting and the town was
It
not,
was not our meeting, it was
Yeah, it was
theirs.
TDEC's meeting. They did put out a notice a few weeks ago, but if you didn't know to go look for things like that, you probably wouldn't have seen it.
however,
It seems to me it would be,
the
the
town,
city ought to have notified.
the town did take the extra steps and advertised in the Cheatham Exchange as well
Yeah, I
as
saw
on our
it there.
social media several times.
I think there were some signs up over there at the end.
There were signs up at the golf course as well.
If you drove by that, there's, it's hard to read them when you're going 40 miles an hour. I mean, I get that.
When do you expect an answer from TDEC?
Mr. Campbell, while I agree with you that the city,
know.
and John
Yeah, it's a
did, he
TDEC thing.
advertised, it was also published in the newspaper. So we took the steps that because it's not our meeting, we're limited as to how much advertising we can do. But John published it on Facebook, it was in the newspaper, it was, the Harpeth Conservancy also helped to get the word out as well, so that people would know. There were a number of people who came, including a couple folks from the Harpeth Conservancy as well. Good night, gentlemen.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions on the update on TDEC?
All by yourself now?
Okay.
Okay, so then you'll bring the changes in the PUD to us.
Pardon?
You'll bring the changes to us
Yes.
next meeting?
Absolutely, I'll bring the changes to you the next meeting. Right now, it's a draft permit, it's not completed. The indications from, that I got, or maybe you had a different feeling than I had, that the permit was not in any way not going to be approved.
I would be surprised if it was not.
I would be surprised if it was not approved. So it's something that meets the water quality test, the withdrawal test, the limitus test. They have a delimitus measure for withdrawal of water, TDEC. And if you're withdrawing less than 5% of the volume of a body of water, it's considered a minor withdrawal. So this is less than 5% of the flow volume that comes through there for each entity. And so one entity will draw a like kind amount of water from a shared easement. And I would like to add that the easement is being proposed. I'm waiting on some documents from DBI now to cross the Doris property to accomplish that task. So we will ensure that that agreement is in place before anything occurs. I am assured by everyone that I've spoken to in the environmental level that it will not diminish the quality of the water, that it will not interrupt our potable water stream, and that the step down in times of drought is sufficient. It goes from 386 a minute down to 51. So it's something that they are required to report. They have to collect data every day. They have to report it once a month. And then there's a gauge downstream.
They will cap and cut off Brush Creek?
That is correct. And there's a gauge downstream that will actually verify that what's being reported falls in line. Okay?
And they have to cap and cut off Brush Creek prior to beginning operation out of the harvest, correct? So.
And Sharon, if I could add, if this TDEC does approve these permits, then any construction of the facilities, as far as the withdrawal, the outtake, and distribution onto the property for the golf courses will come before this body for
They
review.
do. So while they can grant approval for withdrawal and they can grant approval for the shared resource of the water, it still has to go through the federal permitting process and the state permitting process and the local permitting process. So we just wanted you to have a comfort level that we are monitoring, we are following. We're doing everything we can to keep up with this ever-evolving, rapidly evolving project. So next month, be prepared to plow through a pretty dense stack of documents. All right? With that, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, John, anything else?
No, sir.
Do you have a motion to adjourn? Second, all in favor? All right.